So welcome back to AATV. I'm your host Tom, Anvil Hibberd, and I'd like to welcome Gareth Gadge Harvey to the AATV garden.
Nice to be back, Tom, thank you.
Hi Gadge over there.
Yeah, socially distant.
Today we're going to talk about real versus repro kit for historical airsoft. We're going to particularly talk today about Vietnam era, because Gadge has got quite an extensive collection of real and repro items. We may well touch on my personal journey at the moment of buying Cold War British kit to give some perspective from my point. So Gadge, we've got a scene of what my partner would probably call manky green stuff lying around.
Definitely, and I think the thing is, it's what you want it for. So we're talking about airsoft right now. So a lot of the things I buy are for a reenactment purpose, and I want them to be absolutely museum perfect. But in reality, for playing airsoft, if I've got a 50-year-old pair of trousers that are hard to source, I don't really want to run around the woods and jump over barbed wire and do that sort of stuff in them. I want something that actually is replaceable, isn't wrecking a bit of history, and I need the best repro I can get. So I've got some of this original kit, which we'll look at later, but I don't want to play in it. So I thought, okay, where can I get the repro from?
So let's touch on that a bit more. Yep. So I think for most people, reenactment tends to mean the noisy shows they see at county fairs and the like, but it also does mean displays to the public and
and living history camps.
Stuff I would call more living history camps.
Yeah. So
which is where the public are going to be very, very close to you.
Yeah. And especially with Cold War stuff, with your 68 pattern and with this Vietnam stuff, quite often you meet people who've actually worn it for real, and they can spot those differences. If you're doing World War One, the chances of running into a World War One Tom, you can go, oh, your pouches are wrong, or that's the wrong cut, non-existent. World War Two, you get a few veterans still, but actual Cold War stuff, we get people coming up to us and we do Cold War displays going, oh man, I haven't seen that for ages, can I put your webbing on, can I hold the SLR or whatever? And in living history, you owe it to those people really to get it right, because it's their life that you're representing, you know.
But in airsoft, that's a different story. So as you talked about, I was looking at getting so again, this is my perspective, I was looking at getting a Falklands era windproof smock.
Yeah.
Now to get one in my size, period correct.
Weightlifter build is difficult.
Weightlifting build. It's not only difficult, it's expensive. So you're probably looking at north of 150 to £200.
Size 9 smock,
for size 9 smock in good condition. And then, do I really want to wreck that item by rolling around in the mud in it and fighting it and jumping over barbed wire fences and jumping into mud pits and all that sort of stuff?
Exactly.
So there's a real. So I've gone down a slightly different road, and I've got this, which we'll talk about at a later date.
And the other thing as well to touch upon is some things. I mean, Vietnam's not so bad because the harsh conditions there age things a lot. But if we very, very quickly have a look at this original second pattern Vietnam jungle shirt, for want of a better word, it's shagged. Right? It's got lots of holes in it. It's got some rust stains there.
Oh, wow, okay,
You know, it's got a few little moth holes, and unless someone had been in the sharp end for a long time, their day-to-day combat fatigues wouldn't be that damaged. This is a 50-plus-year-old piece of kit. So not only would I not want to damage it, but it doesn't even look that right. You know, you see guys at World War II shows and they're doing World War II British Paras, and they've got an 80-year-old original Denison smock on, and it's almost white. It's so sun-bleached and washed out.
£2,000.
Yeah, they're stupid money. But the rest of their mates are wearing repro ones, and they look like paras of the time who would have been issued a new smock 6 months ago, not an 80-year-old
It's a bit like the armour modelers who model the tanks absolutely filthy and covered in rust to an extent that they never would have been anyway. Or the people that restore, conversely, people that restore a car to way better than its factory finish ever would have been.
So it's that happy medium, and for me, I've been looking for that at the moment. So for example, with this Vietnam crusade to get new stuff, I've been trying to get the best repro I can, and one store in the UK that's really good for sort of repro and reenactment stuff is actually Soldier of Fortune. Like, I'm not saying it's great for everything, but a lot of their stuff is good. Sometimes there's a price premium, but then it's convenience as well. So I looked into getting their Vietnam third pattern jungle fatigues. Now, third pattern are good from about 1969 onwards for the Vietnam War, but to be honest, it gives you that Vietnam look for the whole war to a degree. You know, if you're not being that bothered.
Same for airsoft generally, but not
and the nice thing about the third pattern is it's made out of ripstop fabric, which is quite standard now, but it's pretty new back in the time. So
I didn't even realise. Okay.
So again, it's one of those things where you're playing airsoft, you're going to go past thorns, bits of bramble or whatever. You don't want to get your £60 repos shredded off a bit of a thorn, let alone your £150 original or whatever. So ripstop's a good move for that. So first thing we'll look at, Tom, I think, is shirts.
Okay.
So we've very briefly looked at this as the second pattern shirt, and you can see the colour of it, sun bleached for years, bits where badges used to be, and this is just normal cotton poplin. It doesn't have the ripstop in it. And just to give you an idea of what actual real sun bleached colour is like. Now, you had a shirt off me a while back, which we believe to be an original. It's definitely been used in a few movies, because it came from a props company. And you can see this does have ripstop. We might zoom in on it, but it's not very visible. Those nylon threads aren't actually that prominent.
Oh, it's buried. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually ripstop.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
And if we look now at the reproduction version, it's a very prominent ripstop.
Okay. Yes.
Now that ripstop does get that prominent with a lot of use.
Right.
So I've got some trousers where you can see that ripstop
but
coming
not straight
through,
away.
But not straight away. So if that bothers you, problem. But for me, I'm not that fussed.
And we'll talk about the labels as well, won't we?
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't normally see in an airsoft game, but actually, you know, if this was on display in at a show, so this label here feels very white, but it's sort of very plasticky feeling.
I mean, visually it's a nice reproduction, but it doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. Was the one in the?
This is the one here. We've got piles of green. It's going to get confusing.
You can see it's a slight. Here we go, and we'll do a close up for camera later before we disappear. But you can see there's a difference in colour between the two, and this feels much more fibrous, much more of a natural fabric. Probably isn't a natural fabric, but it feels much more fibrous.
And while we're being critical, the last things I'll say is if you look at the stitching and finish on this original shirt, if you look how fine that stitching line is and those seams, it's streets ahead of our Repro, which is obviously made in China quite quickly, and the lines are a bit wonky, but again, you're not going to look at that in an airsoft game. So that's the bad things. Good things. So for me, the colour is pretty good. There's colour variation always in these uniforms. They're always made in different factories. The colour's good.
There's endless arguments about what colour things should be, and the reality is it varies between batches of dye, time, exposure, everything.
So if you hold the Repro pocket up from the front, I'll hold the original pocket design up, and we'll see that the pockets aren't bad actually. That's the left and right pocket, obviously reversed, but you can see they've got the style of it right. 2-button closure. And to me, playing airsoft, that's fine. You know, I'm happy with that. And lastly, if we just have a look at the cuffs, again, you can see they've got that cuff closure the same. Most people rolled them up. With your original, again, it's that little bit tidier. You know,
and the thread's a lot finer.
Yeah,
it's much more noticeable thread and more contrast.
Now the big one here is the buttons. Why they went for those buttons, I don't know, because those standard US style buttons are still really easy to get. You know, you could buy a cheap M81 Woodland shirt that's ruined, cut them off and replace them, which is probably what I'll do, to be honest, because you do see those buttons. Most of it's concealed, and I'm a stitch picker, I bother about that sort of thing. But all in all, I think looking at two comparable shirts, that's not bad. Now, also, you've got the trousers as part of the suit. The suit comes for about £60 from Soldier of Fortune.
I mean, you can't really argue for a whole suit. You can't really argue too much.
Exactly.
For the price of 60 quid.
Now, fabric, etc., is exactly the same with
It's
the
the
trousers.
same fabric and construction as the shirt.
Now, what I'm going to show you now, though, this is an original pair of third pattern jungle trousers.
Okay. And you can see that now it's worn.
You can see that ripstop's coming through now, can't you? Now, if you look again, we've got the button issue. Not a big deal. But actual colour match, these are paler. But if you look inside,
it's pretty close.
It's not bad at all. If you look exactly where the sun's never touched that. When these were new, they were probably exactly the same shade. These are a very late third pattern, so they do have a zip rather than a button fly. Now, originally I thought that was a difference in Repro and original. Then a bit of research made me realise that actually it's just a different pattern slightly. And your waist adjustment tabs are slightly oversized on that, but again, you're not going to see it.
And these will be a standard issue item now. So they're just bought off the shelf. And to commission new, these dies would have gone. They're dead. To get those dies into operation again, then you're talking about lots and lots and lots of money. It's much cheaper for you as a reenactor and for them as a company to buy off the shelf, off the peg fasteners.
And one thing I do like on these, Tom, so if you can just get hold of the left-hand side leg pocket, if you look inside, now they didn't have to do this, there's a pocket inside the pocket.
Oh, there is.
Which is a bit meta. Now that originally is for, most people think, well, say it was for survival kit, And I think a lot of people kept things like first aid dressings and stuff like that in there. But to replicate that on a bit you'll never see.
Yeah, they didn't have to do that.
No. So for me, that's a nice touch on a repro.
Well, I think one of the other things we should talk about with regard to this stuff is sizing.
Yeah.
Because if you're a non-standard size, and I've encountered this recently getting British stuff, let alone American stuff, if you're non-standard size, i.e. 34-inch waist, 32-inch, and actually most young soldiers are smaller than that, and or have a big chest, it's virtually impossible to get anything in that size.
And also if you're long legged, I've got quite long legs, so when I buy things like Cry, I can deliberately buy XL long legs.
Yeah.
But normally a pair of combat trousers, if they're standard ratio waist to leg, I find knee pads come on my mid thigh.
Yeah. So I think sizing wise, it could just be an enormous. I would quite like people. At the moment trying to find British Cold War. The supply of 68 clothing is starting to dry up.
Very much so.
It's nowhere near as accessible as it used to be. I would quite like to buy Repro 68.
Especially trousers. Because trousers got shredded.
So I've got a set of lightweights which are more available and actually are suitable. So I'm going to be wearing period lightweights with one mat pocket. But finding 68 pattern trousers,
not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. I'm size 4 in 68 pattern trousers, and I find them hard to find. So sizing's interesting though, Tom, because these are a medium regular, which I can just about fit. Those are supposed to be a large regular, but what the Repro company have done is actually they've made the leg length the same on all sizes. Okay. So in US sizing, you have a small, medium, large, extra large, then you have a short, regular, long for leg length or for arm length. Whereas they've actually cut a corner there, so these are oversized in the leg. I also personally feel they're a bit bigger than a real large would be, because I think they've been made for a US Re-Enactment market, and US sizes tend to be quite generous.
Yep.
You know, but again, for me, they're big on me, but not horribly so. These are a bit snug on me, but not indecently so. And when I first bought them, I was thinking, oh, maybe they're a bit too dark, maybe the ripstop's too pronounced, maybe this is wrong, that isn't wrong. But then I got these, these original 69 ones, and I'm like, actually, they're a pretty good repro.
Yep.
And I know I wouldn't take these onto the airsoft field because they're irreplaceable.
Yeah, you put those on a mannequin at a show and talk about it. You're not even wearing them yourself. But these you can go and destroy these if you need to.
Yeah, and it's not just actual uniforms that are getting hard to find. So you and I have both rocked one of these olive drab boonie hats for a long time.
This is my personal. You've seen this before. This is my oldest piece of airsoft clothing.
Pretty much the same here. I think I bought this when I was 15.
Had this since I started playing. Oh, it's an old favourite. Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
Covered in, still got a little cam paint on it and everything.
I've got a camo sweatband there. This isn't a Vietnam War original. This is actually an early 80s US Army issue one. Very similar. The only real difference is where Vietnam ones have a squared off tie on there. Okay. There's a few other minor differences.
Mine off a long time ago.
Yeah. But again, I wouldn't want to lose this at a game because I've had it since I was a kid. So bought a Repro, and this is a Sturm one. Sturm, Miltech, I think they're quite interchangeable. And it looks horrifically new.
Yep.
But I reckon wear it in the shower a few days, bash it about a bit, kick it around.
Bury it in the bush.
You can shape these quite nicely, and I don't think that's too bad.
Again, hang on the washing line for a week.
And again, it's not it's a little bit darker than the Repro fatigues.
But things would come out different dye lots. That would have been different colours. Different
manufacturers, exactly. And a great example of that, very quickly, we'll look at these. I think something that's synonymous with Vietnam is those cotton bandoliers full of 20-round magazines. Now, originally, I think these kept stripper clips, but people put 20-round mags in them. Now, that is one model, dated November '74, herringbone sort of twill cotton sort of strap sort of thing. There's another one dated '69, and I think I asked you earlier to tell me which one's the reproduction one.
You couldn't really tell.
You can't tell, can you? Really? No. I mean, and it's actually this is the reproduction one.
An infinitely large amount of knowledge, I probably could, but from casual observer, absolutely no idea whatsoever.
But if you consider that, there's a little bit of a difference in the stitching across there, but actually, if you don't want to wreck historical replica, historical original, you can take a replica out now, and it looks right. So that's the good news. I think that we're looking at clothing that I think they've nailed it on the repro market. I know you've got some really good Rhodesian repros that look spot on. Footwear's a difficult thing though. So I know you and I tend to prefer modern boots for airsoft.
So I personally will tend to wear modern black leather boots for pretty much any period.
Because you like your ankles.
Because I like my ankles. and I personally think if I've got a bit of mud on them, no one can tell the difference from 10 feet away anyway.
Yeah.
But I get that some people would like to wear, would like to suffer.
Especially, I think, with Vietnam stuff. You can wear a black leather boot, but the jungle boot is kind of like...
I think you're right. It's very
iconic, isn't it? You know. So, again, these are late 80s US Army jungle boots. And they're bad. I've had that pair since I can remember, really. And they're not far off the originals. You've got this, can you feel that's quite a heavy kind of cotton webbing kind of feel? Then you've got these nylon reinforcing strips at the top. Yeah, and across there. Drainage holes are rusted up on them. This is the later Panama sole that's designed to not clog up with mud. And Vietnam ones actually, apart from some manufacturers, nearly all manufacturers bar I think one or two, actually had a stitch going up the seam there. So you can tell if it's pre-1975, it will have a little stitch seam in the heel. Again, that's real detail. But I wore those till they wore out. This is the better of the two boots. The other one's actually got a hole in there. So I went to get some repros. Now, these repros weren't too bad. I got these from the Midlands Airsoft Fair for a tenner. They're already used.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and they look pretty much the same. They've got that nice fabricy bit, but the problem with them is the eyelets aren't very robust in them. I don't know who's made them. And on one of them, the heel started to come away from the sole quite quickly. I had to have it glued by a cobbler, so I'm not incredibly happy about running around on a weekender with these in case my soles and my boots fall
Because
off.
one of the things is, if your feet go and you're out of game,
you're done, aren't you?
You're done. You're absolutely stuffed.
Unless you take them backup boots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most people don't do that, you know. So I thought, do you know what, I'll bite the bullet and I'll get the recent offering of Repro Jungle Boot. And I have to say, it's good for airsoft. I wouldn't wear it at a show.
Okay.
So if we look at this in comparison, this Repro boot, much more nylon feeling across that. The actual toe of the boot,
it's got a built-up. It's interesting. It's got a built-up.
Yeah.
That's got a rigid built-up toe.
Because these are so soft.
Whereas these are,
and it's also much higher on the side of your foot and quite rigid. So I wore these on our webbing walk route.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I took them on the webbing walk route, and I actually rubbed my heel raw on that bit there.
On that bit there.
Even wearing good socks, because they're really, really kind of
very stiff.
They're stiff.
Well, they need breaking in, don't they?
Yeah. But I think but for £40 or £50 a pair.
Because how much would a set of original?
Between 80 and 250 quid, depending on size.
And they're probably trashed.
Yeah. I lost out bidding on a pair of originals in my size for £80 on eBay the other day, which were cheap. Yeah. And they had marker pen on the side of them where a Royal Marine Commando had written his name down the inside. And I was prepared to live with that and put mud all over it for a cheap pair of jungle boots. But if for an open day, for running around or maybe a weekender, they'll do the job.
Once you've broken them in, to have a pair of boots you can rely on, super important. And with mud on again, you'd struggle to tell.
I think I probably want to soak them, get them wet, wear them, let them dry off a little bit, let them mould to my foot, because at the moment they just are not comfortable.
Yeah.
I can live with the fact that currently they look a bit new. I can live with the fact that this is a bit more pronounced, etc. That heel, that comes up a lot higher.
It does come a lot higher.
You can just see, as an example, just looking at that, you can see the difference. What I can't live with is wrecking decent jungle boots. So they would be my show boots that I'd wear at a Living History event to try and fool the regulars or the veterans. They'll be what I'd use for avoiding plastic pallets on a weekend.
Yep. And I think that's almost kind of what we're talking about, isn't it? There's a difference between stuff to wear to a show, where it's not going to get, you're not seriously endangering the further life of that item, and there's stuff to wear in the field, when actually the silhouette is much more important.
Well, one of the reasons why we don't have good supplies of things like 68 pattern battle dress, Vietnam clothes, etc., is because when actual blank fire reenactment was big, all the big sizes got absolutely worn to bits by people diving around the woods, firing blank off each other at shows, etc. I mean, if you consider how much 40 pattern battle dress was made during World War II, for a variety of sizes compared to how much is actually available today, and it's because most of it got used as workwear or reenactment.
You can still get a ton of size 168.
Yeah,
that's easy. Easy.
It's good if you're a midget or a cadet.
Getting bigger stuff is now getting really difficult.
So I think you've got to ask yourself, really. I think Repro now is getting so good that there isn't really a good reason to use original for airsoft other than bragging rights.
Unless there's an absolute shit ton of it. Yeah. So 58 pattern webbing.
It's indestructive as well.
And there is still mountains of the stuff in the surplus system. You know, it's gone up in price, but you know, I built a full set for 30 quid.
Yeah.
And you could have put 20 years ago. You could have picked it up for the same thing for about a tenner, but there's still mountains of it. So I think it's one of those things. Is do a bit of digging and find out just how much of the stuff there is left.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're prepared to endanger it, I've got no problems with endangering my 58 pattern webbing because there's.
But again, are you endangering it by playing airsoft
No.
in it? Like, if you're going to run it over with a truck or maybe like chainsaw it, yes, you are.
No, not really.
But it's fragile things, isn't it? At the end of the
Yes.
day, we're talking about fabrics that can rip. It's like, you know, if I found an original 1979 ration pack, I wouldn't eat it. Mainly because it's gone off by now, I'd have thought.
Yeah,
But I wouldn't
botulism.
eat it because they're
Yes.
so rare.
Yes.
What I probably would do is drain the contents out from the bottom, fill it with something inert, and keep it as a
That's what people
replica.
do. They
fridge
cut the
blade.
bottoms of the tins out.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
stop the tins, and then they lacquer. They'll lacquer the
Yeah.
inside and the outside of the tin to stop it degrading further.
But these are things that at one point you thought you'd never ever see the end of. So I remember, showing my age here, but early 90s, end of the Berlin Wall, end of communism, you could not move for East German kit at market stalls and county shows, etc. You could probably get a full East German paratrooper outfit, and bear in mind they only made about a couple of thousand of those for like 15 to 20 quid, because nobody wanted it. Now you're looking at 15 to 20 pound for a pouch.
Same as German Parkers,
Yeah,
which
they-
were
student de rigueur,
student
weren't they?
de rigueur,
Yeah.
and now they're actually quite difficult to get.
40 to 50 pounds for a German Parker now. Whereas every Oasis fan in the warehouse in Derby had one, I think.
About £5.
So, I'd like to know what people's experience, Tom, is of Repro kits. Do you always swear by Repro? Would you not be seen dead in Repro and it's got to be original and nothing else? Would you be happy taking out a 70-year-old jacket and potentially ruining it? I mean, what's your opinion on using Repro versus Real?
Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support AATV, we have run a Patreon scheme where you can help us stay as independent as possible. If you want to make a single contribution, we have a range of t-shirts available in our Teespring store, and there's a link to both in the description. I'd like to thank Gadge for joining me today.
Always a pleasure, never a chore.
Thanks very much. As always, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.